30,000 milliwatts of power. Broadcasting almost across the valley. AM 1620, the Eagle Radio Network.
Good morning and welcome to the Saturday Morning CEO Radio Show. We are so glad that you have joined us. Now, you might have joined us by audio only on AM 1620, or you may be listening to us on satellite radio out in Europe or parts of Africa. Hello, Africa. Hello, Europe. Hey, we're glad to be out there. Or you could be listening to us live on all kinds of different stations on the internet, TuneIn Radio, and a whole bunch of others. So, but if you'd like to watch our mugs, then you can watch us live right now. If you live in Riverside County, California, you can watch us on Verizon Channel 45 or Time Warner Cable Channels 0. We're lucky. Who gets number 0? We do. Or 126. You can also join us live on the internet right now at smradio.org/YouTube. And you can be watching us this very moment. So come on by our website whenever you want to watch some archives or see what else is there. You can pick up the Saturday Morning CEO book, or you can learn a little bit about some of the other things that you can do to get involved with the Saturday Morning CEO. So we have a great guest today and a great guest co-host today. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Sonia Perez. She is our guest co-host today. She's was a guest on our show just very recently. She runs a farm-to-table program, and she puts together all kinds of great local dining opportunities with local musicians and local artists, and does a bunch of great stuff for kids, is a member of Toastmasters. She's pretty much everywhere but Mars, so keeping really busy. So welcome. How are you doing this morning, Sonia?
Top of the morning to you. I'm doing great.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming out so early this Saturday morning. I pretend myself to be awake this early in the morning, so it's good to have you actually awake and raring to go. You glad to be here?
Very glad, very glad. It's a beautiful morning, and it's good to catch the sun rays and be up early in the morning with our guest this morning. Yeah,
it's great. So tell me, do you have any events coming up or anything that you want to let our viewers and listeners know about?
Well, to learn more about our supporting our local growers, local artisans, you can go to eatingoffthevine.com. We are getting ready to do our harvest festival with our local artisans, putting a menu together with the seasonal food, and as soon as that venue comes up, I'll have it up on my website.
Oh, that's great. Excellent. So go by and visit her, and if you live anywhere near the Temecula Valley area, then you definitely want to try to hook up there. And I haven't seen my invitation come in the mail yet, so I'm hoping I'm on that list there.
You are, Dennis.
Great. Hey, we've got an excellent guest today. He actually was on our show one time before. He is a relationship expert, Don Purdum. Don is a former Army chaplain and has owned several of his own businesses and is really focusing on the importance of our relationships in business and out of business that have a lot to do with the success in our lives. So we're grateful to have Don Purdum on here. Welcome. Good morning, Don.
Good morning, Dennis and Sonia. Thank you so much for having me today.
Hey, it's great to have you here. We love having you on the show. Last time we had you on the show, we had you on with a couple who actually each have their own business. So you were kind of the host. I just kind of opened the mics up and let you guys go. So this is a little bit different this time. We're glad to have you on.
Well, it was great. That was a fun experience. I really enjoyed that. It was very unique. Haven't done that before or since. So it was a great opportunity to interact with everybody and bring some more value to the table.
Oh, it was great. So, well, tell everybody a little bit about your background. I kind of mentioned some stuff, so you can go ahead and dispel any lies that I told, or feel free to elaborate on anything that I missed.
Well, in the big picture of things, you were spot on. I was former enlisted Navy, would later go on to become a chaplain in the Army, as you mentioned. And around 9/11, we had that, that terrible, terrible time and incident happen in our nation's history. And it was a very unique and trying time for those of us in the chaplaincy. I was one of just a few chaplains who was at that time trained to work with spouses, so that we have, pre-deployment, deployment, post-deployment type issues that are happening within the family units. And families play a very big role in unit morale in the military as a whole. And when things aren't going good at home, it can definitely have detrimental effects and ripples throughout units. And so we knew that that was a severe possibility when we realized people were getting ready to go to Afghanistan, and then obviously later to Iraq. And so it was a really unique experience. It was a very trying and challenging time. I would later get out of the Army and go into business for myself. I have now owned 5 businesses in almost the last 10 years. And it has been a really, really interesting time, from really high highs, for lack of a better expression, and then some really deep lows. And then back to some highs and some lows. And I think that's kind of the trend in entrepreneurship, especially in startups and in young companies. You get the run of the gamut. And how do you sustain and grow those things? And then most importantly, how do you keep your family together through that process?
That's true. I think of the life as an entrepreneur as a roller coaster, but I always tell people that, roller coasters would not be very much fun if there weren't a lot of ups and downs in it. So I am very grateful that I married a wife who is happy to cook steak or beans, whichever the budget permits.
Yes. I always say I know how to live on filet mignon, and I know how to live on a hot dog.
Yeah, that's very true. You got to be able to adapt and adjust. So speaking of adapting and adjusting and having some flexibility, and that's what you brought up a little bit too. You have your ups and downs. There's difficult times and there's good times. So what is it that interested you specifically in relationships as it correlates with your business?
Well, relationships are at the core of every single aspect of our lives. And so on the business side of things, of course, if you're not building relationships and building enduring, lasting relationships, you're going to struggle in business, and you're going to struggle in terms of creating prospects and conversion of prospects. You're going to struggle in employee relationships, vendor relationships, and all of that stuff if you don't have that ability to know who you are and know who others are, and then be able to quickly establish and build those relationships. More importantly, in my mind, though, what I saw happening a few years ago, probably around 2009, 2010, is all of these businesses around me were closing. And it was really interesting because we all kind of thought, well, yeah, the economy's hard, it makes sense. But then when you start seeing people in the grocery store or at the mall or wherever you're at that were people you were doing business with, then they start telling you their story, and you're finding out, wait, I'm seeing that at least half the people I know aren't losing their businesses because of cash flow or tax problems or process problems in their business, the traditional things that sink companies, but because of divorce.
Oh, wow.
And I was sitting there looking at that going, well, this is an interesting problem.
Now, is that something you just kind of noticed on your own? Are there other statistics out there that back that up? That divorce doesn't seem like it could be that big of a factor, is it?
Well, no, it is a big factor. And you're right. At first, it was just kind of talking to people.
We got a little freeze on Dawn here. So I'm sure it'll kick back in here in a minute. We're working with all kinds of great technologies here to get us on the air and to get us in a situation where you can actually watch us on cable TV, even though we're on the radio station. So I think we're getting them back here. All right, you froze up there for a minute. Yeah, you talked.
Oh, well.
You're good. You're good. It must be cold where you are because you're freezing a little bit.
It's actually, I live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, not far from Philadelphia, and heart of Amish country for those folks that are interested in the Amish. And it's going to be 85 degrees here today. It's just crazy. It's not normal.
Wow. Oh, that's great. Excellent.
Yeah.
So you were talking about the fact that you were kind of just talking to people first, and then that's about when you froze up.
Right. I just noticed patterns is all that was to that. And then as I started seeing the patterns, we probably talked to 50 people, and out of 50 people, almost 20 to 25 of them. And I'm going, well, that should be a terrible reason for businesses to be closing, because it's not just affecting them and their family, but it's affecting their employees and their employees' families. And this thing has ripple effects. And then I kind of went back to my training in the military, and it kind of started dawning on me, we've got things we need to address here, but I really wasn't still sure if that was a passion or not, or if it was even real. And I just kind of kept plowing forward with where I was at and what I was doing. And I have this great relationship with my wife, Nicole. We've been married 20 years, and it's just getting better every year. And a woman that will stick with you in the worst of times is definitely one to keep in the best of times.
Absolutely. Well, Dawn, I'm looking at you, and I'm just doing the math here. So you've been married about 20 years. They let you guys get married at 5. Is that correct?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think the recipe is for having a good marriage? You're talking about how you and your wife have a great marriage. What do you think the recipe is?
Well, for us, the recipe happened early on. When I am a child of divorce, and I had a lot of insecurities as a teenager and in early adulthood as a result of a lot of those issues that happened in my world. And as I got older, I still didn't realize a lot of those vulnerabilities were inside. So what happened was I really wanted to impress Nicole's mom and dad. And I lied to them. I told them my father was this Air Force general and this and that. And, I wanted to impress them, and it sounded good. And I let it go on for about 3-4 months. And then the guilt kept building. And I finally just come out and confessed. Well, from that day forward, I said, you know what? I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to misrepresent myself. I'm not going to lie. I'm just going to be who I am. And I just was very transparent with them about my whole life story and everything happened. And that really laid the groundwork for a magnificent relationship that has just continued to blossom over the years, because we both are just very real with each other. We're very honest about our temptations, our weaknesses, our strengths, our joys, our fears, our happiness, our sadness. We just don't hold back with one another. And that really has created an environment that's been conducive to building confidence and trust in one another. And so now, we're the most probably stable couple that you may ever meet in the world, that are comfortable in our own skins with one another and in our own lives, because we know each other and we know everything about each other. And it's just a wonderful place to be. There's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, that's really good. I want to talk about something that you and I have actually talked about before, and it's an area that we kind of differ a little bit on too. Is, I look at some couples that there's we just interviewed. I also, later on in the morning here, I do another TV show just on cable, the Saturday Morning Success talk show, and we interviewed Ryan Avery this last a couple weeks ago. He's the youngest ever world champion of public speaking, and he and his wife have an incredible relationship. They've worked together on his talks. She manages his speaking tour. He just got back from a speaking tour of Russia. He is doing a 6-month tour right now of North America, and she's pretty much running the whole business. He's giving the talks, and I love how that interaction happens. However, at the same time, I consult with a lot of businesses, and I tell them almost all the time when they go to set up a business structure, don't do a partnership unless you want to ruin your relationship. And I see more often their problems than not having problems. So my wife is not involved in my business, although she's helped to name several of my businesses. So we understand the level of involvement that works well for us in our marriage. So what are some of the things that you can think of that make that difference happen? Why?
Well, I mean, that's a really good question. I think the key is before you go into business, you better really have a good handle on your marriage and a good handle on your relationship together. You really better be communicating and talking this through. Now, if that didn't happen when you started the business, and I see this all the time, if you start your business and your marriage is already on the rocks, that business is going to cause more complications 9 out of 10 times than problems it's ever going to solve. And I think that couples need to, no matter where you're at in the process right now, whether you're involved in the business or not involved in the business, you need to sit down and start defining, where am I going with this in my life? Where do we want our lives to go? What do we want to do in life? What difference do we want to make as a couple? What impact do we want to have in the world? What do we want to be known for? And when you start to figure that out, then I'm of the persuasion that you use the business to help you accomplish that. But too many people, in my estimation, are working in the business for the sake of building their little empires or their big empires, and building cash flow and working on becoming millionaires in the process, or whatever dreams that they have for that business, but they're leaving the personal side of their lives out of it. And then they get disconnected from their spouses, and then they wonder why they have problems.
Well, I think that's definitely a key point to bring up, is that you do want to focus on what you want to give out of, give life. In other words, you want to, what I like to say in my book, I talk about having a mission plan for yourself and your family, and that's what you use to help decide what kind of business to even get involved in. So, having actually a mission plan laid out, is that something that you think is important?
Oh, I think it's critical. It's critical. If you don't have it, I mean, look, the same principles that we're taught in business ought to be very similar processes and techniques that we're using in our personal lives. So if you've got a mission statement for your business, you've got your core values, you've got your vision, which is just your dream, right, of where you're going to go, and then you have your goals and objectives for how you're going to get there. Well, why aren't we doing the same things in our relationships and in our lives? If we would just take some basic principles, we would see such a big difference in our marriages and our relationships, and we would see a big difference in that trust and intimacy that's grown and developed, and we wouldn't have to worry about that whole statistic. You asked me a little bit ago, is there a statistic out there that proves this whole issue that divorce is a major cause of business closure?
Okay,
well,
so
yeah,
we're gonna go to break, Dawn. But tell us that statistic as soon as we get back.
Sure.
You must be your fairy godmother.
Cinderella's dream comes true because the glass slipper fits.
It fits.
In our world, the right fit can be just as important, especially when it comes to car seats. Always choose a car seat that's the right fit for your child's age and size to make sure your little pumpkin gets there safely every time.
Hop in, dear. Thank you.
For more information, visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat. This message has been brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Chris, can you put the video game controller down for a second?
I can talk and play. Oh, I'm totally annihilating this punk kid in Nebraska.
I just feel like you're not acting like a grown-up in our relationship.
Am too.
Well, you still ride your skateboard to work, there's the comic book collection, the race car bed.
Look, I'm young at heart, but I put money into my 401k every paycheck. I picked up a few savings tips at feedthepig.org. I have control over my financial life now, and that feels pretty grown up.
Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. Putting some money from every paycheck into a savings account or contributing to your 401k can make a big difference later. For free ideas and easy tips on ways to save, go to feedthepig.org. That's feedthepig.org.
So, I bet I look like a grown-up to you now.
Well, except for the footy pajamas, I'd have to agree.
This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Good morning and welcome back to the Saturday Morning CEO Radio Show. We are so glad to have you here. And Don Purdum is our guest. He's a relationship and business expert, former Army chaplain, and he is now focused on what's going to help. I'm doing some technical goofy things here, so we're glad to have you here anyway. So he's gonna talk about what's been going on in his life as he changed his focus to helping people in their relationships, which would help their business, and vice versa. So when he left the air, he said there's a statistic that kind of backs up the fact that divorce is one of the biggest causes for a business failure. And I got to hear this because I'm having trouble believing that it's a very big statistic. So why don't you tell me, Don, what you got there?
Well, I got a statistic from the Small Business Administration through a gentleman that I had met in Dallas, Texas last winter. And as we were talking about what I was planning at the time doing, he said, this is so sorely needed. 40%, he said, of all business closures, the SBA already knows because of divorce. Now, he did share that report with me, which was really fascinating because it was like 41.3% was the actual number that was in that report. And what's interesting is I turned around and found a report by the Centers of Disease Control, the CDC, and in that report, it was just talking about marriage broadly. But what was interesting is if you think about business owners as a general trend, they tend to get married older. And what was going on in the CDC report was a comparative study of people who marry young versus people who marry older. The younger you married, the significantly higher likelihood you were of having a marriage that lasted across the board. So 18 to 25-year-olds who married young, which Nicole was 19, I was 22, they have almost a 70% likelihood of having a marriage for their whole life. Huh. For someone who marries after 25 years old, and for every 3-year gap that you wait to marry, that number starts at around that 25, 27-year-old age group, around a 40% chance that you will not have a marriage that lasts the distance. So you have a 60% chance of divorcing, and for every 3-year gap that goes on, that number goes up 5 points.
That's interesting. I would have thought it was the other way around. Yeah. I thought if you waited a little bit, you were a little more mature, but...
However, I married at 24 too, and we're still together. So I'm part of that statistic.
Yeah. Wow, yeah. That's interesting. So
well, and it does make sense, though, if you think about it, because what happens in the big scheme of things is when you're younger, you're still coming out of an environment where you had rules, you lived in a home, you don't have a lifetime foundation that's laid. And in our culture, we're telling young people, you have to go to college and prepare for the rest of your life and decide your career and whatnot. And I'm not dissuading against that, but the statistics are proving me right on this one, that when you go to college and you decide on a profession and you go into the workforce, you have by default created your own foundation for your own life. You haven't created your foundation with another person. So now this other person over here, they're now creating their own foundation. And when you come together in that marriage relationship, what ends up happening is that you can't merge the foundations. You can't even crack them. I mean, it just doesn't work. So it's what I like to call putting a capstone on top of the foundation of the structure that you built. And then when that doesn't suit you anymore, you just swap it for another one.
Wow, that's very intriguing. I can understand that, and I want to go back to that statistic too. I'm still kind of shocked that 40% of business failures related to divorce. That's incredible. So
it just, if you think about the whole ego-driven system of the business owner, we all have insecurities, fears, and worries. None of us are exempt from that. So when we start our businesses, for that first 2 years, Dennis, what would you say is the most insecure thing that we struggle with as business owners?
During the first couple of years is trying to figure out how to build your customer base to get your money coming in. So money's usually tough that first couple of years.
Exactly. And so you're investing all this time and energy into this baby that you're trying to birth and grow out into some semblance of a teenager at some point. And that's where your work goes. And because you don't have enough money for the things you want or the things that you need, you don't have enough for the business, you don't have enough at home. And at some point it starts catching up with you at home, because most business owners just go and start it. They may consult with their spouse, but it's not at a deep level. It's just, okay, go do it because we got to have money. They go out and they try to start the thing, and they don't have the training and the expertise and the skills and the mentors to help them along the way. And then what ends up happening is they get into trouble financially. Now they come home, they're stressed out in the business because they're trying to fix the problem, putting in 70, 80, 90 hours a week. The problem is you are the problem. But you don't know where to go for help, and so you just make it worse. You become physically exhausted, emotionally exhausted, spiritually spent, and then you turn around and come home to a spouse who, in your mind, is nagging you.
Right.
You on the defensive about, how am I going to do this? Where am I going to come up with money for that? I've got to do this. You have to do this because I've got to go do that. Well, no, and now you're fighting, and now everything's an emotional-based discussion. And that emotion just keeps escalating. So
I'm convinced now. I understand that, divorce could definitely be a big problem with maintaining your business too. So help our listeners and viewers out now. I mean, I think maybe you've convinced many of us that that's something that we really need to focus on. So are there some kind of steps or points or something that we can use to, kind of protect our marriage or make it grow?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first step you need to do is spend time with your spouse. Quit working more than 60, 65 hours a week. You're unproductive when you're doing that anyway. You're not helping your business. You're probably making things worse. Learn how to manage your business and your family and your time. Quit worrying about balance. Balance is the most negative discussion out there. You hear a lot about that. You got to balance your life better, right?
Right.
Balance is a negative. It's not a positive. And we've got to change our mindsets from negatives to positives. We've got to learn to be optimists, because being an optimist is what gives us the energy to help us get through those danger times in our business and in our family life, so that we can get where we want to be. And the fact of the matter is when we talk about balance, you're never balanced. It doesn't exist. So maybe you have a week that you've got to put 100 hours in. For whatever reason, you do have to do that. So instead of worrying about how am I going to make up 40 hours with my family, sit down with them ahead of time, have the discussions, create the expectations, and then say, okay, on the other side of this, here's what we're going to do. And then plan it together.
Right. I think that's a good point. One thing I do with my family too is that we try every Sunday night. My kids are getting older now, so it's not as easy as it used to be. But typically every Sunday night we have what we call a family council, and we kind of go over the schedule and we discuss anything we need to discuss as a family. But figuring that schedule out, the balance, I like to think of balance is important, but I think it's like over the course of a year, not every day or every week, that you have to have your life balanced. And I think that's what you're saying. Is that correct?
Well, what I'm saying is quit worrying about it, because you're creating this negative mindset that you're always chasing 50-50. And then you start feeling guilty when you can't get there, because this week was 70-30. Oh, now I got to get that percentage back next week and flip it, or in 2 weeks or next month or whenever. And when you start feeling guilty because you're spending time with the family now, you think nothing's happening in the business, and that's driving these negative emotions. And then you're in the business, and now, wait, I've got to make up time to spend with the family, and now I'm getting negative emotions about that. And that's what I'm trying to get at, is quit worrying about it. Just sit down and manage it and create realistic expectations together as a family. And if everybody knows what's going on and why you're doing the things that you're doing, I don't know anybody that won't be good with that. Do you?
No, I think it's good. Expectations are something that I talk about a lot with businesses, and it's usually the lack of an understanding of what expectations are that people wind up quitting or getting fired or, not getting that promotion or whatever it may be. So communicating expectations is something that I personally talk a lot about when I coach businesses. So it's the same in a family. I agree. If you got an expectation for somebody else and you haven't communicated that expectation or discussed it, then you're going to be really disappointed when they don't do it, and they don't know that they should have done it. So
that's right.
We've been through that before, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
What are some other points?
When you don't follow through on expectations, then you start hurting the relationships, especially in your marriage, because what happens is if you like Nicole and I, we spent all that time building our transparency. Through that, we built confidence in one another. Out of that confidence, we earned trust. By the way, folks, if you've been in a relationship for 6 months and a year, I'm going to be honest with you. You think that you have trust, but I'm telling you, you don't, because you don't have enough experience together yet to know at what level you can really trust your partner.
Right.
Right. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, because trust is a product of confidence, and confidence is a product of experience.
Right. No, I agree.
Another.
Right.
And then out of that comes intimacy. And we confuse intimacy in our culture with sex. And intimacy and sex are not the same thing. Sex is sex, guys.
Right.
Intimacy is emotional trust. It's that point when you emotionally fully give yourself over to that other person. That's when vulnerability really starts to happen. And I don't mean the kind of vulnerability that you have in that dating relationship or that first year or two of marriage even. I mean that kind of vulnerability that I know every squeaky clean and dirty thing about you.
Yeah.
I
notice a lot of couples that will test their trust. I disagree with that. I think that we should, like, for instance, I set some rules for myself just out of respect to my wife, that I don't, let's say, ride in the car with another woman or, put myself in a situation that looks bad. I don't test myself by saying, look, I'm going to go spend time with this friend of mine that's a girl and everything's going to be okay. Trust me. I think it's good to have some guidelines that you follow no matter what to help to earn that trust. Does that sound like a good idea for you?
Dennis, I couldn't agree with you more. Granted, I'm a conservative evangelical Christian who was a military chaplain / pastor. Okay, so I have been brought up in a certain training and thinking, and I think I've been validated by this when you look in the corporate world and you see affairs going on everywhere. I just wrote an article or a blog, or I did a podcast, the other day on Marissa Bartiromo, who's a CNBC reporter. And whether or not it's true isn't important, because the gossip and the rumor that's out there is that she's having an affair with the ex-executive of Citigroup, who is going through a brutal divorce after 25 years of marriage.
Wow.
This man has thrown his whole marriage down the drain for money, power, and sex. And so here's the thing, whether or not it happened, there's the illusion that it happened. So she's married. Now, what if it didn't happen? What is the illusion that you've created in the public space, and how does that affect your family? What are the things they have to deal with now? And this is true in small communities, much more in big things like a national reporter, because in small communities, everybody knows each other and everybody talks about each other. Whether we should or not, the fact is we do.
Right.
So how is that having an impact on your family and how they're seeing themselves in the world around them and how other people are seeing them? So we do have to protect our marriages and our relationships. And it is important to say, you know what, I'm not going to ride alone with a woman in a car. I'm not going to go to my business partner's house and go in the house when her husband's not home or my wife's not with me.
Right. Those are good. A lot of people think, oh, that's old school. You don't have to worry about that nowadays. A lot of the younger folks think, hey, it's okay. We should trust each other. Well,
it's okay until gossip and rumor starts hurting you,
right,
your family, and your business,
right,
whether it's true or not.
And when you're running a business, you are a little more in the public. And if you're in a small town, my wife's sister lives in a very small town, And not only do they know what you did, they know what your great-great-grandparents did, and there's still some animosity in there, especially if you run a business or you're a doctor in the community or some other, known person. So we got a little over a minute here, so I think you've got some other points you probably want to discuss to help protect our marriage. You want to bring a couple of those up real quick?
Sure, and these are really critical, and I'll do this real succinctly. Dream together. As a couple, sit down every week, go for a 45-minute walk, do something, and just talk about the future together. Dream about it. If you're in a really hard time right now, that's really important. Dream, dream, dream. It creates optimism and hope and opportunity, and then put a plan together and figure out what goals do I need to put in place to achieve it. And when you've done those things together, you'll go places in your relationship you never dreamed of. The problems that we've talked about that exclude transparency, confidence, trust, and intimacy, those problems will go away because they'll naturally happen.
Oh, very good. Dreaming is a big thing. And when we come back from the break, I want to discuss a lot of people from the military have a new dream when they get out of the military, and a lot of them are starting businesses. And I know you've been doing some work with them, so let's talk about that when we come back. So we'll be back right after this break with Don Purdum.
For the California Dental Association, Christy Yamaguchi.
As an Olympian and daughter of a dentist, I know the importance of having healthy teeth and a bright, healthy smile. Tooth decay is the #1 childhood disease, more than asthma and obesity. That's why a new state law requires that kindergartners receive a dental checkup. So parents, prepare your children for school. Take your child to see a dentist. It'll make you smile too.
For more information, call 800-CDA-SMILE.
Do you suffer from the heartbreak of brain rot, feeling bored, sluggish, listless, not had a new idea in days? Using electronic gizmos without a clue why they work? Now there's help. Ham radio, guaranteed to stimulate your corroding neurons and open a whole new world of excitement. To learn more about ham radio, go to helloradio.org.
Side effects of ham radio usage include mental stimulation, desire for education, new career paths, understanding of technology, and cases of addiction have been reported. If you experience any of these symptoms, you're welcome.
Ham radio. It's not your granddaddy's radio anymore.
They were outnumbered, out-equipped. They had no chance of winning, but they had one huge advantage: General George Washington.
The fate of unborn millions will now depend, under God, on the courage and conduct of this army. We have to resolve to conquer or die.
Just as the leadership of one man helped form a nation, today leadership can transform the world. Pass it on from the Foundation for a Better Life at Values.com.
It's like FM without the commercials. It's like XM without the quality. It's AM 1620, the Eagle Radio Network.
Good morning and welcome back to the Saturday Morning CEO Radio Show. We're glad to have you if you're watching us or listening to us or using the new ESP channel that you can just tune right in with your brain. We're glad to have you here, however you're here. So we're back with our guest. I don't know where I came up with that one. Anyway, Don Purdum is our guest, and we were talking a little bit about dreaming right before we went to break. And Sonia would like to talk about dreaming a little bit right now, too.
I wanted to say that unlike Dennis, I have adult children now that are gone and graduated from college, but we still do our dreaming and we do map questing. And as a family, we talk about our goals, which are the 4 pillars of a human being, and we set them up. And as a family, we talk about what our goals are, and we keep each other accountable, but also on that path of where we're going. So let's say we have a goal to travel to Europe that year. Then we're all together, like, where are we at? Oh, we have the tickets, and the kids are, making sure they're making the grades or finishing up with their businesses or whatever it is that they're doing, so we can come together and accomplish that goal. And in the end, we go over them, and it's such a great way for the family to support each other and to bring up your dreams and make them happen.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad that you're doing that. That's important, especially as kids get older, and start living their own dreams. It's difficult to try to pull them all together as a family. So, well, Don, we're glad to have you back, and we talked a little bit about the dreams maybe that people are having that are not only. Let's talk about two things. One is people that are leaving the military, because you have a lot of experience there, that are trying to start a business, or people who are leaving their job, and they're having trouble trying to figure out what to do, and they say, well, I'll start a business, I'll become an entrepreneur. And I like to call them unplanned entrepreneurs. So those of you out there who maybe had that little conversation with your parents as an adult and said, was I really planned? Does it make a difference whether you were planned or not as far as your success in life goes? No. So what are some things for those unplanned entrepreneurs that will help them as they transition from working for somebody else to working for themselves?
Both of those two categories have some similarities and commonalities, but then there's also some major differences. On the veteran side, we like to call them vetpreneurs.
Right.
But yeah, and I'm so grateful for every one of our veterans that are out there. Right now, we all know that our military is getting ready to go through some massive changes. One of the things that we know for an absolute fact that has been published out there is that between the Marine Corps and the Army, over 120,000 soldiers in the next 5 years are going to be thanked for their service.
Wow.
And that's a tough thing. And those are enlisted. We haven't even talked about the officers yet.
Wow.
On the Air Force side, I was just talking with a very influential person who has a lot of relationships inside the Pentagon that just told me that literally they're going to be letting go of between 120 and 150,000 officers in the Air Force over the next 3 to 5 years. And everybody knows it's coming. You go talk to some people down near Eglin Air Force Base, and they tell you which is one of the largest military installations in the world. And these bases are already deserting because they've got people, they're letting civilians come rent on base now.
Wow.
Yeah, I've seen it myself up near Frederick, Maryland. There's Fort Detrick, and if you go online and look for rentals in Frederick, Maryland, you'll find that Fort Detrick is actually renting homes to civilians now on base.
Incredible.
Because it's a way for the government to make some money. So here's the point. The point is that we're going to have a lot of people coming out, and the government knows that the only way this economy is truly going to go is not through growing corporate America. We've watched Wall Street recover. We've watched the growth happen there, but we don't see any real difference in most of our lives. Our lives are about stagnant or worse than they were in 2008, according to most economists and surveys. So where is this economy going to pull out of from? It's going to happen at the entrepreneur level. It's going to be people that jump in and say, I've had enough. I'm taking the reins and control of my own life, and I'm going to go start my own business. And the government is investing in these veterans to help that happen. So here's the thing. Most veterans are really equipped for it, and they've got the leadership skills and the potential and the abilities. The problem with them is that their morale is really low coming out of the service right now. And because their morale is low, so is the morale of their families. And especially, and you can imagine, I would feel pretty decimated if I said, I've given my life up to my country and I'm getting paid peanuts for it, and I'm going to Iraq and Afghanistan and putting my life on the line, and I'm busting my hump here, and the way you thank me is to say thank you, goodbye after 15 years of service, and I don't get retirement or anything.
Yeah.
What's great though, Don, is that when you do counsel them, you'll be able to let them know that they can now shift that into their own lives. They gave their lives to our country and served it. Now they can take that and give into their own lives, their own families, and put that work ethic into their own businesses. How cool is that?
Well, absolutely, Sonia. And I think there's a new patriotism coming. The type of patriotism that says the way I continue to serve my country is by starting a business and building a business and growing a business and then starting another business. And, I just saw Warren Buffett put out a statement the other day that said that a business owner should never have less than 3 businesses over about a 10-year pocket that he or she has started for multiple different income streams. Now, if you do that and you become successful as an entrepreneur doing that, how many people are you helping along the way? How many jobs are you creating? And that's where we're going to change our country. I think that's the new patriotism that's coming, is those entrepreneurs that are starting businesses because they lost their jobs in corporate America, or they've just had enough of the nonsense, and maybe they're not equipped. I mean, the difference between many of them and the military folks is that they don't have the training that the military has given them in leadership and in organizational structure and some of the things that you're going to need to be successful. So it's a whole different mindset between the two, but I think that's the new patriotism. What do you guys think?
Well, I agree, and that's why I started my business. Is I really believe that a community thrives with local businesses doing business with each other. We don't have to go outside. For our community, it's the Temecula, Murrieta area, and I really believe that if we support our local growers, our local artisans, and promote each other and do business with each other, everybody wins. And how better way to do that than to get to know who you're buying your fruits and vegetables, who the artists are in the community, who's developing beautiful olive oils and fig jams. It's your neighbors. And we're all keeping each other economically savvy and taking care of each other's families that way.
Yeah, I think that's something that you're doing is relative in the fact that you find a way to make your own money with your own business. Well, in the same way, you find a way to feed your family by growing your own food too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've got a little fruit orchard and a garden, and it's great to see to harvest what you have planted. And I see a business as the same way. You plant seeds and you let them grow, and they start making you money too. So it's a money tree. It can be a money tree, but if you let it wither and die, just like a relationship or like a garden, the business isn't going to do well.
That's right.
So do those analogies help you at all, Dawn, or do they just...
No, they're beautiful. They hit the point eloquently, Dennis. And I want to add, here's the tension, here's the struggle. You can go get training and mentors to help you inside your business, but here's the unknown truth that no one wants to touch or talk about. If you come out of the military right now and you have a bad situation at home, or you're leaving corporate America, or you've been out of work for 6 months or a year, and you decided you're going to start a business, but you're on the rocks at home, don't you dare start that business. You're not ready. Your family is not ready. It is going to test you. It is going to take you places you're not prepared to go. And the odds of you having your family on the other side of this thing are slim to none. And if you lose your family, you will lose your business.
So it sounds like you get folks mentally fit.
Everything we do is mental. You can't make money if you're not mentally fit. You cannot have a successful business if you're not mentally fit. You can't do well at home if you're not mentally fit. You can't be a great athlete if you're not mentally fit. Everything evolves around that.
Now, so what you're saying, I think, is not. I just want to clarify it for our audience too. Is you're not saying don't start a business. You're saying don't start a business until after you have solidified your personal relationship a little bit better. Is that correct?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Make sure you and your spouse are on the same team. Go interview some other business owners. Ask them what their experience was like when they started. In different types of industries, or if you know exactly what you want to do, go find as many of them as you can of the 10 and ask them as couples. Don't just meet with the owner. Ask them to meet with him or her and their spouse, and you and your spouse go and talk with them and ask them, what was it like? What were the things that happened that you didn't expect? And what were some of the challenges that you faced in those first couple of years, and how did you personally overcome them? Because in that process, you'll find mentors and people that care about you. So don't just go jump into something without going and getting the right guidance and the right information, because you can find consultants and business coaches, and you can go to colleges and get great information and teaching and experience on how to be an entrepreneur and a business owner and build all of this great stuff. But what you can't find are the people in there that are going to say, here are the hidden things that we don't ever talk about, like your family.
Right. Now, you talked about mentors, and I think that when you mentioned that you started as a Army chaplain working with spouses and stuff, I know there's a lot of spouse organizations out there that they help support each other. What would you say is important for someone when they're choosing either a group of people or an individual like yourself to help to mentor them? What are some of the things that they should look for?
Well, I think you should look for, number one, somebody who's been there and done it, and who has at least 5 years experience, preferably closer to 10. I think you need to be able to identify with them. They need to have a story that tracks similar to yours. So my mentor, his name's Tim Karen. Tim, I mean, we're like two peas in a pod. Now, he's 26 years in business, been married for 30 years, and he knows exactly where I'm at. He and his wife have been there. We identify with each other. They know exactly how we feel and why we feel the things we feel and what we're going through. If you don't have somebody that can empathize with you as a mentor, then they're not a mentor. They're just somebody telling you what to do.
Right. Yeah, I think that's important. And mentors that I have, I'm a mentor to a lot of businesses too. You know, I think too it's important to identify where their strengths are and where your strengths are. And sometimes we can be a mentor to our mentor and vice versa in the areas that are our strengths. And I notice that a lot actually in couples who do. See, now it's coming out. I'm agreeing that maybe there are some times that couples do work well together, and it's okay to have a partnership. When I notice it is working, it's because they have identified and truly communicated expectations back and forth, and they know who has what role in the business as well. Do you think that's important to identify who plays what role?
Well, of course, yeah, absolutely, because if you don't know, you just set yourself up for failure. There's nothing worse in the world than the do-it-all business owner who just starts going and doing stuff because nobody else is.
Right. I agree with you, Don. My husband and I, we have our businesses. He has his and I have mine. But he really requires my help on the bookkeeping, on the interest rates, and that side of the business. And we will consult with each other. I will give him the contacts and I will guide him in the way to go. But if he decides to go another way and he feels strongly about it, I know what my role is and he knows what his role is, and we agree to disagree, and that's okay. We make decisions, but in the end, I know that, well, for me, he's head of our house.
It's good to have those expectations clear. So what do you think, Dawn, would be somebody who is in the situation of trying to figure out whether or not to start a business and they're job hunting? Yeah, you always say that's the worst time to try to find a job is when you don't have one, because you're down in the dumps and you're feeling horrible, and then you got to go sell yourself and talk about how great things are in your life and how you're going to give so much to this company. So when you're in that rut, are there maybe some mental exercises or some maybe support with your spouse, or what is it that you think can get you to that point where you are ready to mentally get a business going?
Well, I'm going to tell you what I do, and I'm sure there's going to be some people out there that won't agree with me, and I'm okay with that. But this is what works for me, and this is what I tell my clients to do. You have to realize that you are not in control of your life. You are not.
Okay.
I believe, I'm going to come back and say I'm an evangelical conservative Christian. I believe that God is sovereign and in control of everything. My life has been planned and organized, and I ought to learn to take comfort in that and refuge in that. There's a great sense of release and positivity in that. I mean, it wasn't long ago I didn't know how I was going to pay some bills, and I didn't know where the money was going to come from. And every day, Nicole and I would get up together. We would say a prayer. We would remind God that we know He knows what our needs are. And then we would go about fulfilling the goals of the day that are in front of us. And then stuff just happens every day. So you have to keep a positive mindset. through the whole experience. And so out of nowhere, I don't know how I'm going to pay this big bill that's coming up or the mortgage that's coming up, and I don't have the money in the bank. I got $13 in the bank. And then all of a sudden at 11:30 in the morning, I get a phone call from somebody saying, I have a referral for you. And by 4 o'clock, you're on the phone with them. And at 5:30, when you win the phone call, they're ready to do business with you. And the next day, you close the contract and get the money in the bank, and you're done.
Yeah, it's amazing how things will work out. If you're focused on trying to get them to work out, then sometimes they tend to work out. And, I'm a believer also, so I think God has a role to play, and other people, feel whatever those reasons are that, we attract, what's the law of attraction and all that kind of stuff, whatever you want to call it. It does seem to follow you if you start heading in that direction. So we've got just a couple minutes left on, and I'm sure that our guests are thinking, wow, this guy's got some points here, and I've got a situation with my business or whatever, or their relationship. How can they get in touch with you? Can you give out your website or phone numbers or credit card numbers, whatever you want to share personally over the air?
Sure. If you want to reach out to me, I would love to talk with you. You can get me on my website, obviously, at donpurdum.com. That's DONPURDUM.com. We have some great programs, Dennis, for as little as $4.97 a month. That can give you great value, and a lot of the stuff that we talked about today can help give them some practical tips, advice, and counsel as to how they can go about doing this. There are also other programs. If you want to reach out to me, you can reach me at 972-454-0254. I always answer my phone, and when I don't, leave me a voicemail. I always call back. So I can't call you back if I don't know who you are or why you called me, though. So make sure you leave me that voicemail. And then we've got a special thing going on for veterans right now. We're putting together a huge telesummit that's coming up the middle of this month. It's completely 100% free. We got some of the best experts in the country who have been trained by people like Donald Trump that are on our telesummit with us. It's a 10-day telesummit that runs just in the evenings for an hour, and you will get some incredible information that will help position you as an entrepreneur in the marketplace to help you accomplish your dreams and your goals for your life. So you can go onto my website and find that information, and I hope that people will take a look.
Oh, that's great. Oh, Don, I appreciate the fact that you've taken this time, refocus, I should say, in your life to really help in this area of relationships and business. And that statistic is actually really quite amazing. 40% of businesses that fail are caused by divorce. So that's something for people to watch out for. And there is an important focus that needs to be placed on that foundation, like you said too. And it's okay to marry young as long as you're building your foundation together. I like that. So we're gonna head on out of here. And do you have any final golden nugget of information for our guests before we head on out for the week?
Real quick, be positive, be hopeful, dream about tomorrow, and put a plan in place to accomplish that dream. If you do that and you work together as a team, as a couple, you can do anything.
I love it. I love it. Hey, thanks for being on our show, Dawn. We really are glad to have you here today.
Thank you, Dawn. Yes, it was exciting.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
Oh, it's great information. And remember that you can watch our archives of all of our shows if you go to smradio.org. Most of the archives are there. You can go to our YouTube channel if you go to smradio.org/archives. It will take you right to the YouTube channel. Remember, next Saturday, too, to tune back in and watch or listen to us. AM 1620 in Europe on satellite radio. You can find us on the Eagle Radio Network. And here in a little bit, we'll be filming another version of another episode of the Saturday Morning Success Talk Show, which you can also watch if you're in Riverside County on Verizon Fios Channel 45 or Time Warner Cable Channel 0 and 126. That airs every Saturday morning from 9:30 to 10:30. So you watch us from 8 to 9, take a half-hour break, go grab some breakfast, and then you can watch the Saturday Morning Success Talk Show. So, Don, it was great having you on the air, and we're going to head out of here until next week. And until then, remember that if you're trying to run a business, then you've got to take some action. And action involves your family and your relationships for a great support and foundation. Have a great day.